este es el panel, es Explorando el horror, le pusimos así, en homenaje a Apocalipsis Now, en principio. La idea, trajimos a cuatro especialistas que conocen muy bien el mercado, que tienen idea del cine de género, que trabajan el cine de género y van por el mundo y viajan por el mundo llevando películas. Voy a ir a ver, en primer lugar acá lo tenemos a Andrew Mack, que va a ser el moderador. Él es editor de la revista, de un medio digital que se llama Screen Anarchy, que si pueden, chusméenlo, está bueno. Lanzan todas las películas de género fantástico que hay en el mundo y son un buen panorama de qué es lo que está pasando en todos los festivales y sobre todo en el cine de terror. Luego le sigue Andrew Hunt. Andrew Hunt es vendedor de películas, es CEO de Raven Banner, que es una compañía canadiense que se dedica a representar películas de género en el mundo y con larga trayectoria, al igual que Julian Richards, que es también CEO y vendedor de películas y representante en el mundo de muchas películas latinoamericanas, como La Casa del Fin de los Tiempos, por ejemplo, y a su vez los derechos del remake de la película. Su casa está en Inglaterra, digamos, en Reino Unido, o sea, trabaja mucho con ese territorio, vende películas en ese territorio. Y luego tenemos aquí a nuestro talento argentino, a Demián Ruña, director de varias películas ya, pero su última película, Aterrados, que es un gran caso de éxito para nosotros y un orgullo que hoy se esté trabajando la remake y que la lleve Guillermo del Toro, así que nos va a contar un poco cómo es todo ese proceso de una remake con tenerlo al maestro Guillermo del Toro, ¿no? Entonces, Andrew, I'll leave you. It's all yours, the panel.
Hola. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Perdón, mi español es muy malo. Hi, thank you very much. Thank you to Blood Window for having us today. I'll be completely transparent. This is my first panel moderation, so I am nervous as beans right now, but please bear with me, and I'll let most of these handsome gentlemen beside me do most of the talking, hopefully. And we are here today, to discuss how to recognize production values in a horror movie when it's still very early in its development, why some horror projects will fit into a market like Blood Window or other production markets, while others don't, and I think we will go from there. Sorry, I didn't have my headphones on. He introduced all of these fine gentlemen to me. You all know who they are? Great. Excellent. I don't know what to do. My first time. He's scared. No, it's all good. It's all good. My background is, very quickly, I've done a lot of co-production markets. I've been writing about co-production markets for a number of years now, so I've attended pitch sessions and have sat in numerous mornings where I've just watched stuff and listened to different projects be pitched, and kind of, I go with the Bare Naked Ladies philosophy of, if I had $1 million, would I give that movie $1 million and help them make their movie? And it's more of a personal thing for me. It's not a professional thing. Whereas these gentlemen make professional decisions based on what they're looking for. Okay. Yep. That was a nerve-wracking. What? Better? Worse? Better? Okay. Not nerve-wracking at all. And so I don't get to make those decisions. I do it on a purely personal level of what I would appreciate being able to see. These gentlemen have to make the tough decisions and the tough calls and do it on a professional level, what they would do. So Andrew and Julian make those decisions on what kind of films they bring aboard their labels. Damien, you're getting into production as well and investment in films and seeing stuff through. Well, basically, primarily, what are you looking for to add personally to your labels?
Okay. Hello. Hey everyone, how you doing? As Javier said, I'm Andrew Hunt with Raven Banner. We're based in Toronto, Canada. So we're a worldwide sales agent, and you know, we specialize in genre films, and what we find are working really great right now are genre films that are kind of multi-genre. They're not just one particular thing. They're not just like just a horror film, or you know, it's a horror film, it's a thriller, it's got a little bit of action, it's got an interesting story, something new it's bringing to the table. You know, genre films are kind of a dime a dozen. There's so many horror films out there, and it's really an entry point for so many filmmakers that at this point we've kind of seen it all. And so what we're constantly searching for as sales agents is something that's just fresh and new and original, and isn't just relying on the same old, you know. I think, you know, that's...
Yeah, I would agree with that. We are definitely dealing with a saturated market. I would say in general, the world of cinema has recently embraced genre in a way that it never has done in the past, and as a result, we're seeing, you know, a lot of festivals that would never touch genre in the past who now have a genre window, and a lot of filmmakers maybe who wouldn't have done genre and who are now doing it. So there's too much product, and also the landscape is changing. It's becoming very challenging in many different ways, and in the past, key genre territories like Germany and Japan were always very reliable, and now they've almost evaporated. But at the same time, new markets have emerged, very interesting markets because they're theatrical. The problem with genre in the past has always been that it's primarily home video. And home video is sort of a ghetto that doesn't get the respect that a theatrical release has. But in the new emerging territories such as Southeast Asia, Philippines, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Latin America, particularly Mexico and Peru, we are finding that we're getting very good deals and very good distribution for genre films in those territories. And that's kind of exciting. But at the same time, you know, horror worked very well on physical, on DVD and Blu-ray, and that's evaporating. And what we're left with is digital, VOD, and we have a sort of a designated SVOD channel for horror, which is Shudder, which is very interesting, and you know that's something that we desperately need. We need to make that work. But outside of that, in the digital space, it's difficult for horror to find the kind of traction that it was getting on physical. So it's challenging times. So we are looking, as Andrew said, we're looking for something new, and often that something new comes from somewhere else. You know, that you suddenly have a territory that emerges. Think of J-horror with Japan and K-horror to a degree with Korea and Thailand. You know, there are filmmakers here from India who want to make horror movies, and Latin America recently has emerged as a really viable genre territory. I set up a label a couple of years back called Latin Extreme, specifically to focus on genre films that were coming from Latin America. And one of the first titles we did was La Casa del Fin de los Tiempos from Venezuela, which was very successful. And we did a Brazilian film called Our Evil, and we will continue to do more.
Bueno, yo no busco películas porque trato de hacerlas, o sea, no es el caso mío, soy director. Lo que un poco escuchándolos les puedo compartir la experiencia personal de todos estos años, y decirle que, bueno, obviamente yo como director busco los distribuidores porque la forma de poder seguir haciendo cine es vender tu película o que te entre dinero, y que eso dure en el tiempo, ¿no? Que uno pueda dedicarse a esto. Con mis 3 películas anteriores no logré una distribución fuerte ni ventas de la película que puedan hacer que pueda seguir en el camino, digamos, que pueda seguir trabajando. Cuando hice Aterrados, yo sabía que iba a ser la película más clásica mía, es decir, mis películas anteriores tenían una propuesta de autor, dentro del género, obviamente. No soy de hacer cine de autor, pero trataba de hacer una mirada fresca, y no tuve suerte con esas películas. Y tal vez Aterrados lo que logra es ser dentro de una mirada bastante clásica, lograr tener algo de autor que ha quedado de mis películas anteriores. Y creo que eso fue lo que llamó la atención a la hora de vender la película, a la hora de distribuir. Es que es una película que la pueden mirar todos y tiene algo nuevo, o tiene algo, no digo nuevo, pero alguna reminiscencia de autor que puedan decir, bueno, esto es algo un poquito diferente. Eso es lo que les puedo transmitir en base a bueno, nada, que no soy distribuidor, soy director. Y en base a mis experiencias anteriores, poder contarles eso, ¿no? Que no he tenido suerte con mis propuestas mucho más específicas desde lo personal. Como autor, no he logrado vender las películas hasta que llego Aterrado, digamos.
So we're in Latin American territories, and what appeals to you as when you're picking up films, when you're going to different regions? Is there something that stands out with the Latin American region? Because we have a lot of Latin American filmmakers, when they're adding their own flavor, what is the flavor of Latin American cinema that you appreciate so much?
One of the things that is great about Latin America is that there's a lot of like indigenous stories here, stories that legends, older tales that can be kind of mined, that can be again, maybe they're familiar in some ways, but they're bringing something new. So I think that there's a lot of stories here that can be brought to cinema, that can be old legends, things that can be tapped into that haven't yet been tapped into. And so they're going to be new and original stories for an international audience, right? Because no matter what you do, no matter what you make, you have to think internationally. You have to think about, will this film play internationally? You can no longer can you think, this is going to be a great film for my territory. You have to think this is going to be a great film for the world, right? Because it's getting tougher and tougher to make films. It's getting tougher to make money from films, and so every little penny that you get from around the world is really what's going to, count. So you have to think about, will this film play internationally?
What I'm finding is that the buyers, the distributors, are looking for something very specific. They know exactly what they want, and when they find it, they'll pay top dollar for that. And right now, it's supernatural. So a film like Terrified is a very good example of that. A Canadian film that I sell called Stillborn is another very good example of that. They're not looking for crime horror. If it's a slasher, if it's a serial killer, I'd actually never really heard of the term crime horror before, but a buyer mentioned it to me in Cannes, and I thought, oh yeah, that covers a whole gamut of horror films that they're not interested in buying. But as soon as you come into the market with something that is not too artistic or independent, not too nasty, not too sort of left of field. You know, I love Giallo. I love the Onetti's work, but there isn't, you know, as a sales agent, I would pick up those films and sell them because I love the genre. But from a commercial point of view, it's a niche within a niche. So it's not necessarily going to get you your money back.
Geez, these mics just don't want to work. To your point about Supernatural being popular right now, you know, obviously the issue with that is that if now a filmmaker here goes out and makes a Supernatural film, by the time that it's ready for the market, it's going to be a year and a half later, and buyers could have moved on from Supernatural. So it's like you always have to kind of be ahead of the curve. So I don't know, what was for you when you were making Terrified? Were you thinking of making a specific, you know, film for the marketplace, or how did you tackle it?
Efectivamente, te puedo decir que 10 años atrás escribí el guión de Aterrados, porque yo, no por buscar una salida comercial, sino que sentía que eso faltaba en mi país, ese tipo de historia, pero no pensando en el distribuidor que estaba buscando, porque casualmente después de 10 años se vendió la película. O sea, no puede ser que durante 10 años hayan sido buscando exactamente lo mismo. Lo que puedo decir, digamos, en base a los cineastas que están acá y están tratando de buscar una fórmula, y de este lado también están tratando de darles una fórmula de qué tipo de película está funcionando o va a funcionar. Yo lo que diría es que hagan lo que tengan ganas de hacer, porque es la mejor manera de que les salga bien. Cuando hice mi primer película, se llama The Last Gateway, era una película ochentosa porque tenía, digamos, un estilo muy de los 80, y yo la hice en el año 2005 y no se la vendimos a nadie. Los distribuidores nos decían que era muy, muy ochentosa hace 15 años, y hoy está pasando esto. O sea, uno, si hace lo que siente y lo que tiene ganas de hacer, creo que va a encontrar el camino. A mí me tardó 3 películas encontrar el camino, pero bueno, en esas 3 películas he aprendido muchísimo para que esa 4ª película le vaya bien. Incluso mi película previa se llama No sabes con quién estás hablando. Es una comedia negra, y ¿alguien la conoce? No la pudimos ni siquiera estrenar, o sea, no la vendimos nada. Ahí obviamente entiendo que el cine de terror es potencialmente mucho más vendible, porque tiene un nicho muy fiel de seguidores, y sobre todo si ese cine de terror que uno hace funciona, esos seguidores te van a amar. Ahora, si es una película más, te van a odiar. Eso es un poco el amor y odio que existe entre el espectador de este cine y el productor y el director. En sí yo lo puedo, obviamente, como una visión de director, decirle a los realizadores que se guíen por su corazón y se guíen por lo que tienen ganas de hacer. No sé qué consejo le puedo dar a los distribuidores, pero que distribuyan películas con buenas historias y no tanto buscando un modelo, porque seguramente cuando busquen un modelo lo van a encontrar, pero la historia, si no tiene corazón, no le va a llegar a la gente. Eso es lo que yo creo.
And it's okay, because we're past the 80s trend as well too.
Yeah.
Nothing, you're sitting in a co-production market and a filmmaker will stand up before you and go, I really love the 80s. And then you hear books just go, whoop, and nobody's writing notes anymore. Can I get a hell yeah for top loading VCRs? And everybody's just like, no. So you talk about being a passionate filmmaker and not sacrificing your vision when wanting to make your own films. So for Julian and Andrew, what sets apart a passion project from a really just want to get work project? How can you tell when you're sitting down with a filmmaker, what is a genuine passion project? Because I mean, lightning has to strike. for that to work at the right time when the trend is hitting its cusp, right? As I said, with the '80s thing, that's beginning to die out because we're sick of hearing about it, and because we're '80s kids and we know they're not. So there's a difference there. But when you're sitting down with somebody who is passionate about a film, what have they done to convey that passion to you, and what are they just, I'm just trying to get my first gig, so I'm telling you what you want to hear, kind of thing. Yes, sir.
Well, as Damien said earlier, the film has heart, right? You can tell that a filmmaker is, clearly they're passionate about what they're doing. It shows something more than just a routine formula. But like the industry always has like these trends. Like for a while, it was like the '80s films, or it was the found footage film, or there's a whole torture porn period of time, and we're sick of those. So when we see those types of films being made over and over again, it kind of feels like they're just not looking for something more. They're not looking. They're not. They're just kind of creating, a standard kind of formulaic, almost like a McDonald's burger. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing, there's no passion in it, there's no heart, there's no creativity. It's just yet another film. So I don't know. Yeah, it just what you can tell that there's artistry to it, there's passion to it. That's what we're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, before the film has been made, when you're pitching and you're trying to raise the finance, I think talk is cheap. Even writing is cheap. What you really need is evidence. So if the filmmaker has gone out and shot a teaser, or has a short film version of their feature, and has artwork and has sort of visuals that can sort of get you into the mood, and that level of work demonstrates the passion, and also gives the likes of me the opportunity. I find reading a script a very dry experience. I don't like reading scripts, so if I can see a 10-minute short, that can grab my attention a lot quicker than reading a script.
There was many years ago when The Void was pitched in Montreal. The filmmakers behind The Void made this incredible proof of concept piece and blew everybody away, and it was amazing, and it was the buzz piece, and though you could not get a meeting with those guys because it filled their roster filled up fast. Because it was just amazing. And so they'd gone out, spent their own coin, and put together this amazing piece of work. So Steve Kostansky and Jeremy Gillespie, and Steve Kostansky's work has been in prosthetics, and so they had these amazing prosthetics and visual effects in this short reel that displayed their craftsmanship and displayed their vision properly. And it was the buzz of that co-production market, and by end of the first day they were already considering offers, and they still had another 2 days of meetings to go through. Not everybody can do a proof of concept, not everybody can do that. Do mood reels work anymore?
Hello, Jesus. Hello. Wow. This mic. Okay, now. Okay, good. Yeah, mood reels don't really work. Mood reels are obviously where you take clips of other films and you paste them together to create, a sense of what you're trying to achieve as a filmmaker. Those really just show that you've got good taste, that you can cultivate great clips from great movies, but they don't. So while they might give an indication of mood, they don't give any indication of your skills as a filmmaker. So if you can shoot that proof of concept, 5 minutes, a short version of a feature film that you want to do, or maybe just a scene from the film, that's going to serve you so much better than editing some clips together. But of course, that's going to cost money. And so again, that's where creativity comes into play. There's been so many great films that have started off as shorts. Lights Out, I think, is a good example of a film that was made for one of those 24-hour film challenges, and it became a feature film. So yeah, and to Julian's point, reading scripts it can only take you so far. you know, I myself just finished shooting a film, and obviously it's one thing to have a script, and the script is kind of where you want to be, but when you know, are in production, that's when all your elements are against you. You know, the weather is against you, time is against you, money is against you, and that's really where your skills as a filmmaker shine, right? Anybody can write a great script, but can you make that script a reality?
As a filmmaker with the experience, maybe you could tell us how, tell us the path of Terrified, because maybe there's something that the filmmakers in the audience can glean from your experiences on how, because you wrote the script many years ago, and so there's obviously a tremendous amount of patience that you need as a filmmaker, but maybe give us just sort of the Cliff Notes version of the story of Terrified, so from your own experiences, maybe the filmmakers in the audience can get something from that.
Bueno, un poco el camino de Aterrados fue en el año 2008 cuando se hizo el primer draft de guión. Y después de eso justo empezaron a aparecer películas como Actividad Paranormal, y después, bueno, con el tiempo se puso un poco más de moda el estilo paranormal en las películas, y ahí dije, bueno, ya fue, esta película está llegando tarde, no es para, no, porque para de acá que haga esta película, esta nueva oleada de películas de paranormal va a quedar como una más. Bueno, por suerte no tenía razón, me equivoqué. Y lo que sí me pasaba, y que a veces nosotros los directores cometemos el error de reescribir lo que nosotros creemos que está bien. Calculen que la película, antes de llegar a Fernando Díaz, estuvo en manos de 10 productores diferentes durante casi 9 años, y todos me dijeron que no, si me contestaban, y cada vez que decían que no y se la tenía que enviar a un nuevo productor, me sentaba en la computadora a tratar de reescribir el guión, porque si dijeron que no, el guión es malo o el guión no está bien. Y cada vez que me sentaba a reescribir no podía tocar una sola letra, porque entendía que el guión era ese y funcionaba para mí. Y fue filmado prácticamente como fue escrito hace 10 años atrás, y de la misma manera que lo hubiese hecho 10 años atrás. El camino que tuvo Aterrado fue un poco bastante extraño. Nosotros apunté todos los cañones a entrar en Sitges el año pasado, no quedó, porque la mandamos el último día, y bueno, no esperen al deadline de los festivales, es el primer consejo que les digo. Y bueno, y a partir de ahí entramos, pudimos hacer un estreno mundial en Mórbido, en México, y nos dieron un premio, y los festivales empezaron a abrirse y empezamos a ingresar en todos prácticamente, y nos ha ido muy bien con el público en ese sentido. Bueno, digamos, en realidad el camino que tuvo Aterrados hasta concretarse es el paradigma que tenemos todos los cineastas, ¿no? Es cuando uno está por abandonar el barco de la carrera, de esta carrera, ¿no?, de cineasta, ahí es cuando empieza a vivir mejor las cosas. Y bueno, a punto tal de que cuando terminamos Aterrados no entró en Sitges, yo pensé que iba a ser una de mis otras 4 fracasos, iba a ser mi 4.º fracaso consecutivo, y sinceramente había pedido, me iba a dedicar a otra cosa, iba a pedir un cargamento de muñecos de China para vender por internet, porque yo, que digamos había hecho una comedia fantástica antes, no la habíamos podido vender, hice una de terror, concretamente de género, no había entrado en Sitges, y dije, ya está, me tengo que dedicar a otra cosa, no es para mí. Y bueno, durante todos los viajes que estuve acompañando la película, iba vendiendo los muñecos por internet. O sea, estaba en México y contestaba preguntas. Y no, bendito, por suerte. Pero bueno, el público acompañó, la crítica acompañó, y ahí está Aterrados.
is. I just want to give you a big hug now, but it's such a bad story. Selling dolls. Oh, dude, I didn't know that. I've known you for a year, and you didn't open up to me that much. As a filmmaker, as a storyteller, we're talking about having, you know, a script gestating on the shelf for quite a period of time. Did you work on other things? Did you decide that you were going to write other things to try, just to get more, like, and is that a lesson for other filmmakers, that they should be not just focusing on one idea, but working on multiple things? Because I have a crazy idea that maybe someday I can write something as well, and so in my computer I have multiple ideas and things I go back and forth to, just in the odd sense that maybe I get the testicular fortitude to go, hey, do you think this could be made into something? But should they don't put all their eggs in one basket, probably is the best thing. You know, just try looking at multiple things at multiple times, go back and forth.
Sí, no, a ver, a veces pasa que los cineastas tenemos un proyecto que para concretarlo tarda muchísimos años. No solo el caso de terror, todas mis películas siempre han tardado muchos años en concretarse. Y mientras tanto, ¿qué? Mientras tanto uno es una máquina de producir, uno escribe otros proyectos. Entonces tal vez uno va a las convenciones de productores o segundos coproductores y va con 5 proyectos y dice, tengo este. No, pero no estoy buscando eso. Tengo este otro. Y uno muestra un abanico de posibilidades que la pregunta ahora yo se le hago al resto de los paneles, del panel. ¿Eso asusta a los productores, distribuidores, que un artista tenga muchos proyectos diferentes?
Something I'd like to add to that is that you really never know when the opportunity is going to arrive, but you really want to make sure that you're ready to take advantage of that opportunity when it arrives. When you're developing scripts, I think, you know, the more scripts that you have that are ready to go, or at least close to being ready to go, the better. I mean, I directed a film last year, which was a screenplay that I first came across 12 years ago, and it had gone through a number of possibilities of getting made, and eventually it just went into my bottom drawer and I forgot about it. And suddenly I got a random email, and they wanted to shoot a film in Tbilisi, Georgia, set in the US, and did I have anything that fitted the bill? And I did, and I pulled it out of the bottom drawer, and 2 months later I was on set shooting the film. And actually, what's interesting about that is that the project came about at a time when torture porn was the name of the game, so it was a torture porn script. But there was something more interesting about the way it was using the subgenre, and the producers didn't like that particular unique angle. They wanted something more straight, and I had to sort of find a way to reinvent the subgenre to make it contemporary and to fit into the market that now exists. I just knew that it would be commercial suicide to make a torture porn film in this day and age. So I rewrote the script whilst in pre-production, and gave it a subtext about war, and about war in America, specifically Iraq and Abu Ghraib, and you know, the torture that had taken place in recent wars that America was involved in. So it sort of became a bit zeitgeisty, and as a result, you know, the film got quite good critical response, and was just invited to the Berlin Critics Week. Although the producers declined the invitation, so yes, there you go.
We'll try this. So, Julian and Andrew, how are you guys balancing creatively and business? Because acquisitions and stuff, and you just finished spare parts. No, actually, you know what? I was thinking about this. Show of hands, filmmakers who does have multiple scripts going on at the same time. Who has one script going on? Who's willing to show me that they've only got one going on at the same time? Oh, you guys need to be working harder. To be working harder. No, I'm kidding.
Well, it's kind of putting all your eggs in one basket, as they say, right? And listen, I think that's fine if you truly believe that what you're creating is going to be amazing. You have to have that blind ambition. You have to have that ego to drive you. Like, this is a fucked up, crazy business that we're in, right? And like, you know, yeah. And there is no formula. Like, I always like to say that, you know, you look at somebody like Disney, who created John Carter of Mars or The Lone Ranger. You would have thought, like, you know, Disney knew what the hell they were doing with those films, but those films tanked and they lost a lot of money. Nobody has a winning formula. So I don't know, I just think you need to have blind ambition and pure stupidity to be in this business. And that's why we're doing it, because we're all idiots in some sort of way, aren't we? But yeah, to your question before, how do we balance things? Yeah, you know, the industry is changing a lot, and so for Raven Banner, we actually started as a sales agent doing worldwide sales, and when we turned to the Canadian market, where we're from, there wasn't really anybody there for us to sell our product to, so we created our own label, and because of the smaller pieces of the pie as it is in the industry, you know, it only makes sense for us to be creating product in-house. So we're creating product in-house, you know, selling it worldwide and distributing it domestically, and that way we're kind of getting a piece of the pie on every kind of step of the game, right? So to be that vertically integrated company is what's important to us. Yeah. When you're sitting in a co-production market, and from my perspective, when you're reviewing the stuff that's going to be presented at the co-production market, from my purely objective point of view, I'm always looking at things like budgets and stuff, and you guys have to look at that professionally because you're going to bankroll stuff. And so when I see certain projects come in, again, it was like that thing of like, I'm a child of the 80s, ooh, and then somebody goes, yeah, sweet, like $10 million, and you just heard the air. Oh, and it's like, oh, dude, no, that's not going to happen. These people don't have $10 million. And I've had friends filmmakers who've sat down with other producers and have had their idea of what their budgets are, and the other director's like, well, you know what, you really don't have a $5 million film, you've got a $3 million film. As a filmmaker, you're heading into those meetings. How much of your vision are you going to be, or of your expectations or vision, should you be willing to sacrifice in order to see that realized? To what point do you remain stubborn and passionate about your vision in order to see it get made? Well, you can remain stubborn all you want, but if you're asking for a ridiculous amount of money, no amount of stubbornness is going to get you that money, right? So I think you need to be very realistic. Again, budgets are coming down. You know, you just have to be smart about it, and that's why creative funding is you need to have just as creative as a producer as you need to have as a director, right? It's so important to finance films nowadays with soft money, with tax credits, rebates, shelters, regional incentives, co-production opportunities. That really, you know, equity investment of a film is a very small part of getting a film made. And going back to what we were talking about earlier, the proof of concept. The proof of concept is really important because that allows us as sales agents to be able to take it to a market and do pre-sales on it, right? And so we find we have been very successful in the last few years with pre-sales. But you need to have that proof of concept in order for that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a business point of view, it's interesting because the whole business of film is broken. it doesn't work. It's completely unviable, and it's sort of propped up by various sort of funding mechanisms, effectively soft money. But the soft money comes from an area of the industry that is more focused on art and culture. So really, you know, they want to support films. Then there's an inclination not to want to support a horror film because they don't really consider that as being art and culture. So how do you cross that divide? How do you sort of come up with a project that can get that kind of funding and enter the market as a sort of an art house horror, and in doing so play theatrical? It's quite interesting that organizations like Eurimage now has a specific person that looks at genre, so that's part of the challenge, you know, is if you can't get the hard equity in, you know, to make the film work, you know, most films are losing between 70 and 90% of their cost. They're only recouping 10 to 30%. So it's you know, to persuade an equity investor to invest in that business model just doesn't work. You have to get your money from these incentives, and how can you speak their language, and how can you get them to speak your language?
Yeah, in Canada we have a governing body called Telefilm, and it's very hard to get them to put any money into genre film. I guess they just don't like portraying Canadians as bloodthirsty animals, and clearly they don't watch enough ice hockey because we're great at ice hockey and punching the crap out of people on ice, but God forbid we should put it on film.
Well, actually, an interesting little story, if I may indulge, is there's two production companies in Canada that used to get envelope money. And so basically they were handed an envelope of money to produce films because they had a proven track record. And so they had a little bit of money left in these envelopes, and they pulled them together because they saw a little teaser on Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez's film, you know, Death Proof and so Planet Horror, yeah. And so that little teaser was Hobo with a Shotgun. And so they pulled their money into make this film Hobo with a Shotgun, and Telefilm was furious. Like, they were angry, but they couldn't do anything about it. And Hobo with a Shotgun turned out to be the biggest selling Canadian film of the year that year. So it goes to show you that, you know, sometimes these people with in power don't really have the most sense. Anyway, should we open it up to the floor?
Yes, let's do. It is that time because I've run out of things to say. So yes, we will take questions now, and I guess this is the point where I get to point at people randomly. If somebody has a question, please raise your hand. And yes, you sir, the handsome devil.
Para Demian, ¿qué control vas a tener con la versión que vas a hacer en Estados Unidos? Si vas a tener corte final, si vas a tener que pelear con los productores, que nos cuentes un poquito de eso.
Tengo por contrato un corte, mi versión, y después a pelearse, pero tengo mucho respaldo del productor. Un poco volviendo a esto de la pregunta anterior y también tomando la pregunta que haces, tiene que ver mucho el presupuesto con el criterio también, obviamente desde dirección en conjunción con producción. Cuando nosotros hicimos Aterrado, digo yo y Fernando Díaz, teníamos muy poco dinero para hacerlo y no teníamos dinero para hacer la escena inicial de la película, del baño, porque no podíamos filmar en set, no podíamos construir un set y eso nos costaba solamente $2.000. Y entendimos los dos que la película se mantenía gracias a esa escena inicial brutal que la necesitábamos y que solamente por $2.000 no podíamos dejar de tenerla. Pero es, digamos, es una decisión, creo que también a veces cuando tenés un director y un productor con sentido común, el presupuesto puede ser superado con sentido común, digamos, con poder conversar el productor y el director de cuáles son los puntos fuertes de la película y qué dinero necesitas para esos puntos fuertes. Digo, y un poco esto te respondo un poco también a vos, es decir, tengo libertad completa a rodar, tengo un presupuesto reducido, pero para mi estilo de cine está perfecto. Y bueno, y después en la postproducción, no sé, veremos qué pasa. No sé. Espero que el sentido común y el criterio se pueda llegar a mantener.
Hola, hello. Pablo Pinto from Chile. I appreciate your time and your words, everyone. So I agree with Andrew from what he said about making movies for the future sometimes. And I was asking everyone who wants to answer, what about the future of horror? What do you think it's going to happen like in 1 or 2 years? It's because it's changing so fast, and the world is crazier every day, and you see things on news that you don't expect to see. So what do you think about that? What will horrify us in a few years?
Well, I think one thing that we have to keep in mind, of course, is that there's always a new audience for horror films, right? So everybody sitting here, I'm sure, is a fan of horror films. But a few years ago, they remade Carrie, and they remade RoboCop, or they just remade Suspiria, and so obviously these films are being remade for a new audience, for a modern audience. A lot of young people who are going to the cinema, they don't like going back in the past. They don't like watching old films because maybe the pacing of it is off compared to what they're used to today, which is fair. But so there's always going to be a market for remakes. There's always going to be a market for fresh new content, for content that pushes the envelope, or for mall horror, which is what Blumhouse films are. They're films that aren't really scary, they're not really gory, but they're making a lot of money, and they are helping to create an audience and a market for elevated genre films. So what the next few years holds is anybody's guess, but there will always be a market for horror. Simple as that. And it's like anything. It's gonna go in waves. It's gonna be really hot, and then it's gonna die down a bit, and then something will happen and it'll become hot again. And earlier I was saying that found footage films are dead. Somebody in probably the next 4 years is gonna make a found footage film that will reinvent the genre, and everybody will be crazy for it. And we'll call him crazy for making it, but then he'll make it and it'll be a success, and everyone will have egg on their face. So, the certainty is that everything is uncertain. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's we're kind of moving into a bit of a dystopia in a way, I think, worldwide, and I think sort of that's I think that horror deals with real issues, but in a sort of a metaphorical way or an allegorical way, and the genre reflects the world in which we live, and I think we live in very interesting times right now, and there's a lot of material to work with as genre filmmakers. So yeah, I mean, it's the reason why genre works is because it has a loyal fan base. It's niche. It has a certain value in the market, but it's loyal. which is it's demonstrated by all the genre film festivals. What other type of storytelling has that degree of film festival support? You know, it's so yeah. As Andrew said, it will always be here. You know, it's like trying to kill a zombie. You know, it's going to come back. Yeah. So it's positive.
Sí, no tengo la respuesta para eso. Es una pregunta que yo me haría estando sentado ahí. Creo que dependerá también de si estamos en búsqueda de un formato, de un estilo que funciona, o estamos en búsqueda de algo que está faltando. Creo que al menos esa es mi visión como cineasta, de siempre intentar hacer un cine creyendo que algo está faltando, que podría ir. Pero bueno, eso algo que está faltando, a veces uno no se da cuenta o simplemente busca una fórmula que está funcionando. Tampoco pueden ser todas las películas súper originales, porque todos están buscando eso que está faltando. La verdad es que no tengo me gustaría saberlo.
Hola, buenas tardes. Una pregunta para Andrew y Julian. Basándome en la pregunta anterior, digo, ¿funcionaría de acá a 5 años para las nuevas audiencias? Personajes como El Hombre Lobo o la historia de vampiros, pero con una mirada nueva, ¿podría seguir siendo contado ese mismo personaje a las nuevas generaciones?
Absolutely. Again, you know, Wolfman, Mummy, Zombie, Dracula, all those. Listen, Frankenstein, they're all great horror legends, and all it takes is somebody to bring a fresh perspective to it, to reinvigorate it. And it's funny because I was just sitting with a big company, I won't say who, but they said that they're looking for exactly that. They're looking for a fresh take on some of those, classics. And obviously, there's lots of people who are going to be sitting and writing it, and to my point earlier, that one person will come along and they'll be able to create it, and who knows who that person will be. But yeah, so definitely, I think it's ripe for mining. So if you have a fresh take on that, go for it.
Yeah, I would say that it's all filmmaking, whatever genre you're working, it's about storytelling, and telling a good story. The good thing about the classic horror films is they were good stories written, often adapted from novels written by great writers. They're also brands that the worldwide audience is already familiar with. So there's less risk because immediately the whole world knows who Dracula is. So if you're making a story in that area of the genre, then there's lots of things going to be in your favor. But the challenge is to give it that new contemporary spin. Yeah.
To that point, Universal just came out with they had a plan for the whole Dark Universe series, and it started with Tom Cruise's version of The Mummy, and again that did not do as well as they had hoped, and so they had a whole series of films planned, and they've now all been scrapped. So but there you go. But still, just because of one failure doesn't mean that whole thing is dead. It comes down to one person creating something unique and original, and it will reinvigorate it for sure.
Let the lesson be learned, don't let Tom Cruise do horror. He can do action, that's fine, he can have that, but don't let him touch horror. No. It was a comedy. We all know that. It was a comedy. You have a microphone, miss. Please, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Mariana. I have actually two questions to ask the first one would be, how's the best way to explore the film, an international horror film in the world? Would be the same process, the same strategy as the other films, like theater to and TV and everything? Or maybe it's better if you just explore an OTT, a niche OTT platform? And the second would be, which countries do you believe are the best to focus on the sales of an international horror film, because they have a big audience, or they buy a lot, or anything that you want to share with us?
Well, one of the things that we do as a sales agent, obviously, is we sell films to the international marketplace. And each distributor in each territory kind of has their own thing going on in terms of what's working for them. So we never take a stance of saying, okay, this film, we're going to release it on OTT, or it's going to be released theatrically. As a sales agent, we never make those plans. We allow the distributors, obviously, in their territories to figure out what's working for them. So, you know, in some territories, theatrical is still working, and they want to push a film theatrically first. Other territories, they're just going to want to sell it off to an OTT platform right away. So, you know, there's some filmmakers who they make their film, it plays a film festival, and somebody like Netflix comes along and buys it, and you know, might buy worldwide rights for it. And as soon as that happens, like, that might be a good deal for the filmmaker, but then it does kill theatrical in those markets. So yeah, so I don't know. I think it's best as a filmmaker to not even really think too much about how it's going to be released or where it's going to be released, but kind of let the distributors kind of do what they're going to do. I don't know.
Yeah, because I'm not a filmmaker, so that's why I'm asking.
There are certain territories that don't buy horror. Israel. I've never sold a horror movie to Israel, ever. And it's also very difficult to get horror into Eastern Europe. It's possible to get it through pay TV, but you know, I think that there are certain territories that their means of distribution are such that they're either only going to do local films that are usually, you know, comedies, or they're going to do Hollywood films, studio films, and an independent film from Canada that's a horror movie, or an independent film from the UK that's a horror movie, never get into that market. There's no space in the market for it. India is difficult to get into, but on the other hand, you know, you have markets that were traditionally very strong in horror. I mean, the whole of the English language territory is North America, UK, Australia. They've always had a big appetite for horror. It's become a little bit more complicated now, but Asia, Southeast Asia, Taiwan, Japan, Korea, they have a big appetite for horror. Latin America is tricky. Again, it's essentially because, you know, an independent horror film's probably not going to play theatrical in Latin America, so there's no physical market left here. So what can you do? The value is in pay TV, but television doesn't like horror. So the only thing you're left with in Latin America is transactional VOD, which is iTunes, and there's not a lot of value in it. So unless you're making a film that can get into the theatrical window in Latin America, then, you know, you're either going to sell your film to Latin America for 150,000 or 2,000, and there's no in between. You know, so it's very tricky to but you know, we really want to try and aim at that theatrical space. That's really the thing to go for, because if you're just reliant on VOD, you're in trouble.
Thank you.
We have time for one more question. And I'm sorry, gentleman in the back, but this handsome fellow here.
Hi, how are you? First, thank all of you for your view on the market. You have been speaking about future films and the industry. What about horror TV serials? We never heard about that in Latin America. about TV serials, because we have been speaking about feature films or movies, but no TV serials. How do you see the market of horror TV serials?
TV series are a lot more challenging to create. The thing with feature films, of course, is that it's easier to create independently, right? You're creating a 90-minute product, that's it. But to create a TV series, obviously you're hoping to create, 7, 8, 10 one-hour episodes. So it's really cost prohibitive for most independent filmmakers. And that's when you need to have the backing of, Amazon or Netflix or a broadcaster. But I don't know which country you're from, but if you have, you're from Argentina. If you had a horror TV series and you took it to, an Argentinian broadcaster and they got behind it and they put a little bit of money into it, then maybe somebody like Netflix would want to put a little bit more money into it. But that's kind of the game that you have to play. I know that there's a lot of Canadian TV series that a Canadian broadcaster will put a little bit of money into it. They'll get some tax credits, they'll get some regional funding, and then they'll take it to a Netflix or an Amazon to complete the funding. So those things, they're bigger picture, they're more difficult, more challenging. So that's why, for our purposes, we're speaking solely to features.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's an interesting sort of dilemma that we have, I think, is that the 90-minute format, whether that still works with the emerging audience, what's great about series is you're building a returnable audience. With a single film, your audience comes and goes and has nothing to come back to. So from a business point of view, it makes no sense to make a single film when you can make a TV series. I'm looking at this and thinking, well, what can I do about, I have no idea. It's like a new frontier, and the only thing you can do is sort of experiment. So I'm looking at my catalog of 100 films and going like, maybe I can choose 5 of these films and cut them down to 60 minutes and repackage them. That's a possibility. So that's sort of the way we're beginning to think about tackling the way that distribution is going, which is effectively SVOD, and SVOD is like broadcast, and therefore they don't want single films, they want series, and they want a returnable audience, and so we have to go in that direction.
It's funny though, just to finish off this thought, is that literally like 5 years ago and prior to that, it was like TV series creators wanted to get into feature films, right? And now it's completely shifted. It's feature filmmakers are wanting to get into TV series. And so you will see that where, again, feature films are a great starting point in some sort of ways to start your career. And then they've opened up the door for a lot of filmmakers to then get their meetings with Netflix and Amazon and to create bigger concepts like, Stranger Things or, all the other, horror series that are out there right now. So, yeah.
I think that's our hour. We're done. So thank you very much for joining us today.